Hi, George Shevchuk here with UprightGuide.org, May 15th, 2016. The message is how to make heaven on earth. I obviously, as a Christian, and it might be a disappointment to you, but Jesus is the way to make heaven on earth. But you've heard that 1,000 times before. We're going to get into some more details than that, I believe. We don't know exactly what Jesus will do or how he'll do it. There's supposed to be 1,000 years that Jesus will reign as our king in the future, according to the scriptures. But I have some ideas of what he may do, judging of, looking around and trying to see how screwed up everything is. I wanted to bring some things to your attention. Things like your coins in your pockets, the pennies, used to be copper at one time. I don't know if you know it or not, but they just have a thin, probably electro coating of copper. I think the metal in there is zinc. Same thing with the dimes and the quarters. Before 1964, there was a large percentage of silver in our dimes and quarters. Now, I don't think they have any silver in them at all. We've been robbed as a country. Not too many people want to pay too much attention to that. We've been robbed not just that way, but you must have heard these statistics. They're all over the internet. When you look at the statistics of the Federal Reserve and how money has been printed and how money is no longer backed by gold, and the average dollar today is worth something like 2% of what it was back in 2000 and I'm not sure. I think it was 1917 or something, like when the Fed started their subversions. And it's not just our money, it's everything. We live, to a large extent, we are in the movie Matrix, the first movie. I was kind of surprised that they would let a movie out like that, but then it just was amazing to me that people could watch that movie, get the entertainment, all of the fighting scenes and the sensationalism that they have in the movie, and the more deeper meaning just, right over most people's heads, as far as how we are sort of like the people that live in the Matrix. Except instead of living in a bubble, we're couch potatoes, and we're fed our programming through our television, computer, and radios when we're in our cars. God knows what other way they have of programming us. I know that sounds nuts, but we are influenced by the things we watch and see, and they don't call it programming for nothing. Look at your food, for example. The food in our country is nutritionally bankrupt. They do it, I guess, partially to save money, because if a product has a longer shelf life, the producer of the product can make a higher profit. So they have all kinds of preservatives in there. They put all kinds of pesticides, and they created genetically modified organisms. This thing is really, as the Europeans call it, frankenfood. It's going to bite us in the butt in the future. On top of the fact that there's poisons in the food itself is bankrupt in regards to nutrition. Most food in this country is fertilized with petrochemical fertilizers. The three basic elements of fertilizer is nitrogen, potassium, and phosphate. Those are the basics to make something look like it's supposed to. But in reality, there's all kinds of trace minerals that are supposed to be in the soil that are long gone. And these are the kind of ingredients or trace minerals that you have to have in your system in order for you to be able to live to 120 years of age and be healthy and to fight off most diseases. Then there's the medical establishment, the racket that now we're forced to pay for, whether we want to be killed by it or not, by Obama's I guess you would call it his curse that he put upon us. The whole idea, the first time in America that a person is forced to pay for a service, whether he wants it or not. A lot of these things started out with insurance and insurance companies, and medical insurance eventually led to a situation where people were paying 10 times more for their medical benefits and their medical attention than what the medical attention should cost. And they really kind of let it happen because they weren't paying for it right out of their pocket. You know, the insurance was absorbing a lot of the cost, and the prices were going up, and eventually, you know, we get into a situation where we have this single provider. They call it single payer, but it's a single provider of insurance, which is the government. And then we're into a big brother situation with a centrally controlled government that is controlling every aspect of your life. I don't really see how we can escape this. The only way is to be able to educate other people, to get other people to become wise, so that they can discern how they're being deceived, what is right and what is wrong. And one of the primary ways for people to become, to develop a defense against this kind of deception is reading the Bible. That is why Catholicism and Orthodoxy are never going to be able to get you where you need to be in order to be a free and healthy society. Because in these types of pseudo-Christianities, you're being led around by the nose by a priest, and they don't encourage you to read the Bible. They basically have the attitude, we'll tell you what you need to know. Well, that doesn't work for me. And if that works for you, then you'll be led around by the nose all your lives, from cradle to grave. So many aspects of the things that are wrong that I suppose Jesus would somehow address. When you see shows, even some of the remaining decent shows on television, the televangelists, I hate to mention names, but I grew up sort of on Charles Stanley, and I think that he's pretty good for what I call the milk of the word. You got to start somewhere, and he really does a good job getting into the basics. But I've noticed that over the years, even though the singers and the performers on the In Touch Ministries are talented, the music is becoming increasingly ugly. Music is another way to affect people's thinking. Music is vibrations, and vibrations can either be positive and complement life, or they could be negative and they could have a negative influence on life and on thinking. And this is happening slowly. It's like if anybody's read the book Animal Farm, when the animals are looking at the side of the barn and the language of the rules are changing over time, but they're changing so gradually that they don't notice what's happening. And this is what's happening with things like our nutrition and things like the music that we hear and things like the value of our money. And I'm just touching a few areas. There's this attack that we're under is coming from multiple directions, and we don't have a chance to resist, to have a free society, unless we wise up, because we're a democratic republic. We're a republic. Our representatives are elected democratically, but we're a republic. We're not a democracy. Keep this in mind. A democracy is mob rule. You don't want a pure democracy, because that means laws go out the window. And laws are very important. And And there's a tendency to try to get people to think that laws are not important. You hear some of this baloney in even some of the Protestant churches where I hear phrases like, when Jesus died, the law was nailed to the cross. Well, that is ridiculous. The law is the law. The law always was the law. God's law always will be the law. He says that not one dot or dash of my law will ever fade away. The whole world will pass away, but my law will not pass away. What was nailed to the cross was not the law. It was our shortcomings. It was our debt, our inefficiency. We could never be able to fulfill the law on our own. And therefore, Jesus Christ died on our behalf because he was able to fulfill the law. He is perfect order, which is called righteousness. There's a few notes that I made. I don't know if I want to cover a few other things, but, I also wanted to talk about other things. But some of the things I'm going to talk about, if I talk about them now, you may already think I'm a crackpot, but if I talk about these other things, then you'll really think went out for in orbit. But there's a lot of things going on that most people are not aware of. They steer you into the way you're supposed to think and the way you're not supposed to think. The establishment, religious leadership. For example, astrology. I'm a student of the Bible. I read the Bible many times. It's true that the Bible does speak against soothsayers and the divination. That is true, and I agree completely that things like what is called the horoscope are things that we should stay away from, because you're basically walking into a room of smoke and mirrors, and the situation is so complicated that Satan can deceive you 1,000 different ways. You're opening yourself up to being destroyed. However, the concept of astrology being that your birth somehow has an influence on your character and personality, that seems, in my mind, I've seen correlation. I can see correlations as I go through life. For example, in the medical profession, Pisces is overly represented. That's an indicator that there's something going on here. You can see if you look around you that Pisces and Scorpio, they tend to be get together when it comes to marital relationships. Another example is Geminis. Geminis have the capacity to be deceptive. I'm not saying they are deceptive, but they have that capability to be deceptive. They don't always use it. And kind of interesting that I think, if I'm not mistaken, that when John F. Kennedy ran against Richard Nixon, that was a confrontation between a Gemini and a Capricorn. And now we have Donald Trump, who is a Gemini and defeated Ted Cruz, who I believe is a Capricorn. There are patterns, there are things that are going on there. They may not be that important, but what is important is the way you're being steered and what you are supposed to believe and what you're supposed to think is stupid and what's not stupid. I mean, did you ever notice that in this society, if you're turning on and you talk about UFOs, and I don't know whether they're real or they're not real, but that's not a problem. UFOs, that's fine. You want to talk about Bigfoot? Oh yeah, Bigfoot could be very. You talk about astrology? Oh, that's crazy. So why is astrology any more crazy than UFOs or Bigfoot? And I suspect that the reason is because the society doesn't want you to have anything that gives power to the people. Now, the communists took over in Russia, defeated and killed the Tsars and his family with this whole slogan of power to the people. But that was all just a scam. By the way, on that note, communism was a scam right out of the gate. Do not think that Karl Marx was so stupid that he thought that system could actually work. He knew that if you made everybody equal, no matter how hard you work, you're all going to get the same amount of money. By human nature, the new game in town is how little can I do and still get the same amount of pay. And I want to caution you, to try to, the whole purpose of this video